For people on fixed incomes, inflation hits harder than for the rest of us. The effects of that are already beginning to show for some seniors in the province. Justin Chandler covers Hamilton-Niagara for Ontario Hubs, and he joins us now on what he's seeing in his region. Welcome, Justin.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
All right, so according to a report by the Social Planning and Research Council of Hamilton, while poverty stats in Hamilton are declining, seniors seem to be having a harder time. I want to pull up some numbers that sort of explain this. I'm hoping you can walk us through this. This is data, poverty rates from 2015 to 2020. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so we're looking at data that was collected in the 2016 and 2021 censuses, and this shows the percentage of people in poverty using the low income after tax method, which is one of the ways that Statistics Canada measures poverty. They take half the median household income after tax, adjusting for size, which in Hamilton was about 80,000 in 2020. So what you're seeing here is the percentage of people who are earning about 40,000 or less in 2020, and the comparison to that amount in 2015. So what you can see is in the city of Hamilton, overall, the amount of people on lower income has declined, same for children and same for adults, quite significantly, whereas for seniors, we're actually seeing a slight uptick.
Now we're seeing it's just 1%, 11% in 2015, the poverty rate in 2012. Is that alarming?
Yes, because in the context of all these other rates going down, sometimes in a jump, it's unusual to see seniors' poverty going up. Also because seniors, generally, the poverty rate tends to be quite low. So the experts that I spoke to said this really is a statistically significant and concerning trend.
All right, so we'll get into that a little bit later, but I do want to take a step back. How does this trend fall in line with the national average?
It's also what we're seeing nationally. The 2021 census shows that for people 0 to 54, poverty rates are down quite significantly. But for seniors, again, we're seeing a slight increase.
Something that, when we talk about poverty rates, something that we do touch on and something you talked about in your article is food bank usage. What did you learn about food bank usage among older adults?
Yeah, there's some pretty concerning stats here. Hamilton Food Share found that in March 2020, the year-over-year increase for seniors accessing the food bank was 16.92%, which was more than double the increase in 18 to 64-year-olds, which was under 7%. So what that means is that the rate of seniors accessing the food bank is growing much quicker than the rate of adults accessing the food bank. And it was the same trend the previous year. So in 2020 to 2021, for adults, it was essentially a flat rate. And for seniors, there was a 30% increase in that year. And one of the things that is probably important to note is when we're thinking about some of these numbers, we're looking at 2020 and people might be thinking, okay, well, what about the pandemic social supports that people were getting? And that is something that plays in here. The researcher who authored this social planning report, Sarah Mayo, told me that the CERB, the support that people were getting, is attributable for some of the decrease that we were seeing in poverty in that year, but so are other supports like increases for child benefits. And so we were seeing programming and we were seeing efforts prior to the pandemic for bringing down these rates. So it's not just the CERB. But then you see the CERB, a lot of seniors weren't getting that. And you can see, just how big these decreases were for one group versus how, the other group is actually going up. So really quite a stark difference there.
Was there anything else that she sort of attributed to the increases in older adults accessing food banks? You talk about some of the things that might be decreasing it, but is there anything that would make it go the other way?
Yeah, one of them that she mentioned was just the decline in pension quality that we saw in Hamilton during deindustrialization probably 20, 30 years ago. So a lot of people who might have been working in manufacturing and working in factories and might have counted on good pensions, years back, those started to decline. People stopped getting those. A lot of these businesses started to close in Hamilton. The industry declined. And so now we're seeing people who are seniors, and when those good pensions would have kicked in, they're not. So that was one of the things that she mentioned. She also talked about food inflation. And one of the things to note here, everybody buys food, but for people who are on lower incomes, for people on fixed incomes, like seniors, generally they're spending a higher portion of their incomes on things like food and shelter. So inflation actually hits them harder.
All right. For your article, you also spoke to Tom Cooper, director of the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction, who said in his 20 years working in poverty reduction, seniors have always had the lowest levels of poverty, something you said just off the top. What does he attribute this trend to?
Yeah, one of the things that he mentions is increasing housing costs. That's a concern for a lot of people. And again, we mentioned for seniors, that might be a higher rate of what they're paying. For seniors who rent, when you think about Hamilton, I mean, rent has increased. I think in September it was up 18%. We've been seeing double-digit rent increases year over year for quite some time now. And even for seniors who are fortunate enough to own their home, if they're on a fixed income and the value of their home is skyrocketing, they might be paying a lot more in property tax. So he mentioned that they might be, house rich but cash poor.
All right, let's talk solutions. Were there some solutions being suggested by the people that you spoke to reverse this trend?
Yes, one of the things that Tom mentioned actually goes back to the Social Planning and Research Council of Hamilton, and his group and them have been involved in setting up this tax filing program for low-income people that the council actually runs. And so he mentioned how for a lot of seniors, they're getting their income supports through old age security or the guaranteed income supplement. And these are things that you have to file your taxes in order to get. And he said a lot of people, they don't do that properly. They miss out on things. Maybe they don't do it at all. And so what I learned from the council is that in the most recent year that they have numbers for, they actually helped about 4,000 people file their taxes, gaining $5 million in benefits back for those folks. So that's one of the things that he mentioned that we could direct people to that would really help. Another thing that both him and Sarah mentioned was rent control. So when you think about housing, you think about people who have to pay rent every month. And unfortunately, for some, if you're in a newer building, what happens is your landlord can raise the rent any amount year to year. And even for people who are in older buildings, because we have vacancy decontrol, it creates a bit of an incentive to maybe get turnover on your leases. So you might be a senior who's been living somewhere for a very long time, you're paying a set rate, and your landlord knows that if you leave, they can bring it way back up to market rent. They can raise the price any amount that they want. So Sarah and Tom worry that there's some incentive there. Yeah, and then the last thing that they mentioned was social assistance. You've talked about this on the show with Kat Eschner before, one of my colleagues. Social assistance rates by really any metric are just not high enough for people to get by on. And so that's one of the things that they pointed to that would also really help.
Justin Chandler, really great stuff, very important story. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Take care.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.